Hello everyone, welcome to another interesting and informative session of the Analyst brought to you by Vajiram and Ravi. In today's session, we'll discuss 7 important articles as featured in the Hindu and Indian Express for your comprehensive understanding of the current affairs explained to you in the easiest language possible. The topics are as follows. From an analysis section, which stands imperative for the upcoming mains examination of 2026. In the first topic, we are going to analyze the new edition of India Semiconductor Mission and why the government is putting so much of impetus on the procurement of raw material for these semiconductors. Then, in the second topic, we'll try to understand the utility of double contribution convention aspect of the India-U.K. free trade agreement and how it is going to lead to generate further employment for Indians in the land of our former colonizers. Then, in your mains value addition section, we'll try to analyze the concept of one nation, one election, followed up by 4 important topics from the perspective of prelims examination, where we will not only try to simplify the news for you, but also provide you the much important value addition. So, stay tuned. So, the new edition of India's Semiconductor Mission actually is aiming to incentivize the supplier of raw materials like, for example, critical minerals, rare earth elements, etc., while the world is reeling under a memory chip shortage. So if any one of you is planning to go actually and buy laptop, mobile phones, tablets for your education purposes, you might be realizing that this particular sector is actually going through heavy side inflation. Why? Because of the supply side constraint. The issue which forms an important component of our GS3 paper under the larger theme of energy security. So first and foremost, what is the context of the news? Recently, the Cabinet Committee of Economic Affairs, which is chaired by our Honorable Prime Minister, it ended up clearing a 1.27 lakh crore for the second edition of India Semiconductor Mission. Remember that the first edition of India Semiconductor Mission had an outlay of approximately 76,000 crore rupees, right? As well as we are also trying to actually achieve self-sufficiency when it comes to the mobile phone manufacturing in our country, and even for that we have actually allocated 62,000 plus crore rupees. So first and foremost, what are these semiconductors? Semiconductors are basically those materials whose conductivity property actually lies between the conductor, a good conductor of electricity, and a good insulator of electricity. So the question which can come in your mind is why? Why we prefer semiconductors over conductors when it comes to the manufacturing of various electric appliances like, let's say, for example, mobile phones, tablets, your cameras, etc. A simple answer to that is that these semiconductors, they actually allow for the regulation of the conductivity of electricity in them, which can be easily done by the addition of impurities, a process which is scientifically termed as doping. While on the other hand, if we look at, let's say, for example, a conductor like copper, they actually allow the electricity to flow freely and thus do not allow for any kind of strict regulation. Thus, these semiconductors like, for example, silicon, germanium, gallium, arsenide, etc., they actually functions on very low operating voltage because it is accessible for us to actually control the conductivity of electricity in them. Thus, can we say that they actually have less electricity consumption? Thus, they also generate less amount of heat. Also, they are very compact in size, right? Just look at your mobile phones. And thus, they are also very less expensive to be utilized and create these electric appliances in comparison to the conductors. The idea is that as our population is increasing, as our population is, the majority of the section falls in the bracket of the demographic dividend, more employment generation is going to be done. Thus, the propensity to consume of the Indian economy is significantly going to increase. And thus, there will obviously be the inflation of the middle income category of our country. Thus, the demand for such various mobile phones, smartphones, cameras, laptops, tablets, that is significantly going to increase. And for all of that, we basically function or require the semiconductors. And thus, the semiconductor market of our country is valued at $300 billion by the year of 2030. However, let's say currently the share is approximately around $80 to $85 billion. only 17% of this semiconductor chip generation actually comes from indigenous companies. For almost 83% of our semiconductor chip requirement, we basically rely upon imports. Keep this in mind. Okay? So even in this sector, even in this very emerging and critical sector, we are also an import dependent country. Okay? Why that happens? Why there is such a large scale shortage of raw materials when it comes to the creation of semiconductor? Why there is very less private investment and incentivization in this sector? All of these aspects we'll try to discuss. First and foremost, let's try to establish that why the India Semiconductor Mission actually matters so much for our country. This is basically an excerpt which has been directly taken from your Press Information Bureau. Take it. So these are the arguments which were given in that particular article published in the PIB in the month of December 2025. According to which, how these semiconductors, they are actually critical to the functioning of modern economies of the world. Where it basically quotes the Economic Survey 2025 and 6, stating that how these semiconductors, they form the backbone of energy networks, financial markets and telecommunication. So let's say, for example, our government is putting a lot of impetus on renewable energy, and to supply of this renewable energy and the integration of this in the distribution chain, we basically require to create large scale power grid. Those power grid also functions on these very essential semiconductors itself. Or for example, let's say we are creating an app platform to regulate the stock market, a very integral component of that financial market. All of those systems connected with the chains of computers, laptops, mobile phones, they function on what? Semiconductors. Or for example, let's say if we refer to the sector of telecommunication, artificial intelligence, machine learning, big data analytics, basically the sectors which are going to transition our economy to Industry 5.0, all of them basically are going to function on this very small basic principle of semiconductors. Just to understand that, for the interconnection of the themes, right, with the multidisciplinary subjects which you have, just let's try to kind of ponder upon an idea that what if we want to impart the future demographic dividend, the students who are right now in the schools, in the tier 2, tier 3 cities, in the rural villages. What if we are actually trying to put impetus on imparting them a good knowledge about artificial intelligence, virtual reality, learning about the modern day technologies? All of this requires semiconductors. Okay? Now, in that particular scenario, in that context, you can actually refer to a very important case study which you people can quote in your GS2 paper as well as GS4 paper, and then connect that with the issue of the lack of semiconductor chips which we have in our country from the context of GS3 paper as well. Take it. So let's try to step inside the IAS officers' moving classrooms, which is actually trying to bring artificial intelligence and science, technology, engineering, mathematics learning to 50,000 plus government school students. The name of the officer is Vinayak Mahamuni, who has actually conceptualized this Dhyan Rath, which is basically a digital learning bus on the wheels, after noticing that how the village children were actually being kept away from the modern learning tools. Modern learning tools like, for example, virtual reality headsets, coding platforms, 3D printers, integration of artificial intelligence. All of this were actually missing in these government schools, specifically in the rural areas, due to the heavy financial cost of building individual technological rooms in 1,500 different schools. Thus, there was basically a kind of a moving classroom was created inside a bus. The space is set up with computers, virtual reality headsets, 3D printers, robotic kits, and science experiment. And thus, let's say for example, one class is being conducted at one school. Now this classroom itself can shift and go to another school. So again, it requires very less financial investment. So it is also, kind of fiscal prudence from the side of the government also. It shows the value of financial propriety. It shows the value of innovation, right, which is actually being utilized by a bureaucrat at the grassroots level. Good example for GS2 and GS4, but at the same point of time, try to focus on this aspect. So to actually, kind of impart modern day technologies, right, modern day learning to our future demographic dividend, we need all of these, the computers, virtual reality headsets, 3D printers, robotic kits. all of them functions on what? On the semiconductor itself. Then even, let's say for example, as a country altogether, if our government of India is taking some pragmatic steps, is taking some global targets and commitments, even to complete all of them, we require these semiconductor. Just for your common understanding, let's say our government is saying that we are going to install 500 gigawatt of renewable energy under our Panchamrit target by the year of 2030. For that purpose, let's say our government is saying that we have launched a Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana, under which we are going to basically install 1 crore solar rooftop panels in the residential sector. Thus, to do that, these solar rooftop panels, they basically functions on what? They require photovoltaic cells. The photovoltaic cells, which basically converts the photons into the electrical energy. These photovoltaic cells are actually made up of silicon diode, right? First and foremost, do we have shortage of this raw material or critical mineral? Yes. Let's say in the context of silicon, which is actually important to create the semiconductor. The semiconductor which actually helps the conversion of this photovoltaic energy into electrical energy. We are actually 76% import dependent on that. So even to achieve such global targets, we are highly import dependent country. We do not have raw materials to actually produce these semiconductors. Also, focus upon the importance of semiconductor to actually achieve such renewable energy targets for our country. They also form an integral pillar of our national security. So if we talk about, let's say in the context of national security, you people can very easily recall the Pahalgam attack which took place, right? The state-sponsored attacks, in response to which our government basically launched Operation Sindoor. So in this Operation Sindoor, you guys can easily recall that how there was taking place a large-scale warfare which was actually based upon drone attacks by Pakistan, and the kind of detectment of those drones, kind of hitting those drones in the air itself, precision technology. This basically forms the basis of the Hoffman's analysis of the future mode of warfare, where the analysis basically states that how the future mode of warfare is actually going to be based upon the pillars of cyber security, precision technology, like for example detection of such drones and hitting them as an aerial target itself, and the automation of warfare. And for all of this, we will basically require what? These drones are functioning on what? Semiconductors. The PIB article itself says that how in this particular sector, there are very few countries right now who is trying to create monopolization of the market. Countries like, for example, Taiwan, South Korea, Japan, China, USA, etc. For example, just to quote in your answer, Taiwan itself produces 60% of the semiconductor chips of the world. Keep this in your mind. So don't you think that there are certain countries which are actually trying to concentrate these modern day technologies which are going to be imperative for our national security in the future, and thus it is imperative for our behalf as well to actually start developing indigenous self-sufficiency in that. It becomes much more important if we look at the supply chain disruptions which are taking place across the world, whether it was pandemic or it was Russia-Ukraine war, or the recently ongoing Iran-Israel war as well. These supply chain disruptions actually give us an idea that in future, let's say for example, if we are importing this lithium or silicon, right, for which we have more than 75% of import dependency. Let's say majority of them is coming from the region of China. In any kind of black swan event, let's say if China declares war on us and says that we will not provide you all of these important raw materials, don't you think our entire indigenous semiconductor manufacturing capability is going to be compromised? And thus, that will be detrimental to our energy sector, telecommunication sector, financial market, energy sector, as well as your national security. Clear? Also, just look why it is so important for us to actually develop self-sufficiency, because we are a heavily import-dependent country when it comes to such critical minerals. Bismuth, which is important for pharmaceutical and chemicals, 85% import dependency, 82% for lithium, 50% for titanium, integral component of aerospace and defense application, 42% for tellurium, important for solar power and thermoelectric devices. So also you can quote this case study when it comes that how, let's say for example, such integration of artificial intelligence and robotics to our education sector to actually kind of ready our demographic dividend for the future industry 5.0 is not a possibility if we are not going to become self-sufficient when it comes to the raw material production as well as the manufacturing of semiconductor chips. Keeping this in mind, our government basically came up with India Semiconductor Mission. And these are the salient features of it, right? Which people can actually quote in your answer. This is going to be your heading and this is going to be your substantiation. The heading is creation of semiconductor fab scheme or fabrication scheme, where the government basically provides 50% tax incentives or fiscal support for setting up semiconductor wafer fabrication units covering mature technology nodes. Then there is display fabrication scheme, where the government actually provides 50% financial support directly, not in the form of tax incentive, to establish AMOLED and LCD display fabrication units in India. Right? The AMOLED and LCD display which you people use in your laptops, which you use in your TVs, which you use in your mobiles. Design linked incentive scheme, where there is an outlay of 1000 crore to actually support chip design startups and micro, small and medium enterprises with up to 15 crore rupees per company. Then there is a Chips to Startup program, which actually enables access to the latest electronic design automation tools across 397 universities and startups. So the government is also trying to focus upon this technology upgradation in the universities, where we are actually trying to create such a method which can actually help us to create these semiconductor chips at a much lower cost, with less use of, let's say for example, some very critical raw materials. What if we can end up finding some alternative for that? And thus we are also trying to create such future technology tools as well, nodes as well. Comes your future skill program, which is basically being run by the Ministry of Electronics and IT and NASCOM, which actually focuses on the skilling and the reskilling in the emerging technologies, including the semiconductors. Keep this in mind. Under this program itself, the government is basically incentivizing various private sector players to actually start establishing fabrication units. The government is saying, do not worry about it. We are going to basically forgone almost 50% of tax for you, right? Thus providing you a kind of a fiscal support. And we are also going to provide you 50% financial support, right? When it comes to the screen manufacturing. Thus, various private companies are actually establishing such fabrication units of semiconductor chips across the country. We are also tying up with other important industries of major players like, for example, Taiwan. So there is your Micron Technology, which is establishing semiconductor manufacturing facility in Gujarat, where they are actually going to enable assembly and test manufacturing for various kind of dynamic random access memory chips, microprocessors. Then comes your Tata Electronics Private Limited, which is establishing such semiconductor manufacturing, right, in Gujarat as well as in Assam. So this option basically stands correct. Then comes your CG Power and Industrial Solution Limited, which is actually establishing a facility in Gujarat. So for example, even this stands correct. Then there is your Canis Technology India Limited, establishing such a semiconductor manufacturing facility in Gujarat. Your Vam Sundari Investment, establishing such facility in UP. 3D Glass Solution, establishing such semiconductor manufacturing facility in Odisha. 6SEM, which is establishing such facility in Odisha. So even this stands correct. We have got one odd one out, and that was your very difficult question of this year prelims 2026 paper. The Continental Device India Private Limited, establishing such manufacturing facility in Punjab, and Advanced System Package Technology, establishing such facility in Andhra Pradesh. Remember, just draw a map, draw at least 2 or 3 such companies and show their fabrication units on the side of your page. Your answer is enhanced and you will fetch 1 extra mark. Then we are also trying to actually focus on advanced indigenous microprocessors. The microprocessors which are basically the brain of this functioning unit, right? So for example, if there is a mobile and mobile is performing various functions, it perform that by the coding which is actually done in these microprocessors and the core semiconductor technology, for which we have indigenously developed Dhruv 64. Dhruv 64, which is a fully indigenous 1 GHz 64-bit microprocessor developed under the Center for Development of Advanced Computing, which basically functions under the Ministry of Electronics and IT. under the Digital India Risk 5 program? Is it the third chip fabricated under the DIRY program? The answer is absolutely yes. After Tejas 32 and 64 microprocessors which we developed. The idea is for the large-scale deployment across sectors such as 5G infrastructure, automotive electronics, Internet of Things. And thus, there are various such indigenous processors which we are currently developing, like for example, Shakti, Ajit, Vikram, Tejas. In the context of this, what are they? They are basically the kind of microprocessors which are being developed by India. Remember, India consumes nearly 20% of the global microprocessor output. Is it India's first homegrown 1 GHz 64-bit dual-core microprocessor? The answer is yes. So remember, this is a very important debate which was right in the front of your eye, right? Many of the time what happens that we just shield our eye because of the lot of noise which we see around us. Some random species being discovered in Western Ghat, right? Some random small scheme which the government has launched. But this is a very important issue for the future of our country to actually become Viksit Bharat by the year of 2047, right? So remember, the issues are right in the front of your eye. You just need to enlarge your view, that's all. Ye clear hai? The idea is that when we are actually going or embarking upon this route of self-sufficiency when it comes to the semiconductor manufacturing, which is obviously going to impact all the economic sectors of our country, and thus is the most important pillar to actually become $30 trillion economy by the year of 2047, one of the biggest impediment which we are facing is the lack of raw material or critical minerals which we have. For that purpose, let's refer to the Ministry of Mines report of 2023, according to which India currently has 30 essential critical minerals, of which we have complete import dependency for 10 minerals. So there are 10 minerals which are not at all found in our country altogether. Keep this in mind. In comparison to the China, which has actually become a kind of a global leader when it comes to the extraction of such raw material, processing of it, and manufacturing of it. Just look at the data. China, how it has emerged as the world's largest mining nation, with an exploration investment of approximately $20 billion. Keep this in mind that even we have National Critical Mineral Mission. Our investment is approximately around $2 billion. China is only investing 10 times more than that, which is actually helping China to process 87% of rare earth elements, right? The 17 rare earth elements which exist. 58% of the world's lithium refining, for lithium for which we are almost more than 80% import dependent. 68% of silicon processing, the silicon diode which is required for the conversion of photovoltaic energy to the electrical energy, right? So China has basically emerged as a leader, and in the sharp contrast to that, we basically emerge as a kind of a import dependent country for these critical minerals, the critical minerals which are basically the essential components to manufacture semiconductors. Why? First and foremost is, do we not have resources at all in our country? So some of you may argue that, sir, we do not have oil and petroleum reserves, right? That's why we are import dependent. Same thing can be said in the context of critical minerals also. Nahi. That is the issue. The first and the foremost issue is the inadequate exploration and the tapping of the reserves. To understand that, we will take up a case study of ilmenite. Take it. Basically, we are just dealing with back-to-back previous year questions right now. We dealt with your Pradhan Mantri Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana, another PYQ of prelims. We dealt with the mineral insufficiency which we have in our country, another PYQ. Ilmenite also appeared as a PYQ in your prelims examination. So basically, ilmenite is largely found in your igneous and metamorphic rock, right? Now look at the peninsular block of our country and you know that we have sufficient amount of indigenous igneous rocks in our country. And thus, we also possess 12% of the global reserves of ilmenite, right? Found across the country, majorly on the coastal areas. However, this ilmenite is also considered as the isotope of titanium dioxide. So if we start exploring and extracting ilmenite, we can very easily extract titanium from that. Now, just let's look back at the conversation which we were having. We were talking about titanium. Titanium, which forms an integral component for the aerospace and defense application sector. The same titanium for which we are almost 50% import dependent. So when we have 12% of the global reserves of ilmenite, why we are so much import dependent when it comes to titanium? The reason for that is inadequate exploration and the tapping of that reserve. One of the reasons which is cited mostly by the private sector is that these minerals are very deep-seated minerals and there exists high-risk investment in exploration and mining. For that purpose, let's take example of this lithium. Lithium, which was basically discovered in the Riasi district of Jammu and Kashmir, right? And there was a national celebration which was going on that now we have discovered lithium reserves. We are going to become self-sufficient in the lithium production. Till now, not 1% production has taken place here in Jammu and Kashmir. Why? Because these lithium reserves, they are actually found in a large-scale clay deposit. Now, there does not exist any globally proved technology where we can actually extract this lithium and use it with 100% optimum utilization from these clay deposit. So to actually, kind of discover these kind of critical minerals, we require large-scale technological upgradation, large-scale geological survey, large-scale geo-information mapping is required. For that purpose, you basically require a large-scale capital investment in research and exploration itself, which can actually take years, and thus there also exists the issue of long gestation period. So for example, let's say you got a block of 1 kilometer square area by the government. The government said, ठीक है, इसमें discover करो, ठीक है, how much lithium it has, how much potential it has. You started discovering it, let's say for 3 years. After 3 years, the scientists, they came out. They said that Malik, I'm sorry, थोड़ी सी गलती हो गई, ठीक है. There is no such commercially utilization proved lithium minerals which exist in this particular sector. Don't you think that will lead to a huge capital loss for you? And that is the reason that why India till now has only discovered 10% of its total mining potential. 10% of total mining potential has been discovered and we have mined only 2% of that. So basically all of these factors act as a kind of a lack of incentive for the private sector. And you can actually quote this case study of the lithium deposits in Jammu and Kashmir in your answer. One thing which we can assess from this particular table is that it's very obvious that India is a resource-rich country, yes, absolutely, but we do not have resources for all 30 critical minerals. Remove the second statement. Just imagine one important sector of debate and how many questions it can actually lead to. When it rains, it pours, right? So if someone would have solved this year prelims paper of 2025, the same, almost same questions appeared in the prelims of 2026 as well, regarding rare earth elements and critical minerals. One simple understanding, can India be considered as to have the second highest share in the mining of rare earth elements? Absolutely not. Agar hota, then why would have been so much import dependent country? Okay, just eliminate the second option. We are left with 3 options. 3 automatically becomes correct because it is present in all of them. Simple understanding, rare earth elements are not a set of 13 metallic minerals but 17. Take it. 4 is wrong as well. Take it. 1 and 3 becomes the answer by default. Clear? So what are the steps? What has been the government of India's response? First and foremost has been to actually secure overseas mineral assets, for which we are actually tying up, right, with various other industrial partners in other countries. And for that, we have basically launched Kabil initiatives, where various public sector units of our country are tying up with the industrial and exploration units of other country to actually explore mineral assets outside. Second, your Geological Survey of India and Center for Scientific and Industrial Research is actually trying to promote circular economy. So if there is any laptop which you are discarding, the government is trying to procure that under solid waste management rules, trying to extract semiconductor chips from that, refurbish it for the reusability of it. Then even for the extraction of critical minerals, that has been included under the incentives provided under Production Linked Incentive Scheme. In this sector, now there exists 100% foreign direct investment under automatic route. Then, under the National Critical Mineral Mission 2024, the government has fast-tracked the regulatory approval process, is providing financial incentives to private company to actually take up much more area for research and exploration. for which you can acquire critical mineral assets abroad also, tying up with Kabul. Enhance the trade with resource-rich countries. So can anybody tell me, there exists a concept of lithium triangle. Which countries forms the part of this lithium triangle? We are also trying to promote mineral processing parks and create Center for Excellence of Critical Mineral. Under Mines and Minerals Act of 2023, remember that the private sector is now allowed to actually even start mining 6 out of 12 atomic minerals. Then you are allowed drilling and subsurface excavation at the prospective stage itself. There has been creation of a National Mineral Exploration Trust, which basically funds the grade 4 to grade 1 level of exploration. Now you take up single license and you can actually explore area up to 1000 kilometer square, even if it is spread in the different parts of a particular state. The mine owners can also sell 50% of their annual mineral, including coal, in the open market. So remember that UPSC has already asked this question of India Semiconductor Mission, but now they can actually link it with the concept of raw material or critical mineral import dependency which we have. When you are answering, try to answer it from both the aspects. That will provide you a much more comprehensive answer. Try to attempt this particular question and we move forward to the next news, where we will comprehensively try to cover the recent comprehensive economic trade agreement or free trade agreement which has been signed between India and UK, which actually facilitates export of labor-intensive products, thus boosting the idea of Make in India. The issue which forms an important component of your GS2 paper under the theme of important bilateral agreements, and GS3 paper under the theme of Indian economy and related issues. So what is the context of the news today, which has actually appeared in the explained section of your Indian Express? The first is that amid a fracturing world trade order, the India-UK free trade agreement came into effect from the 15th of July to 2026, which is, remember, India's first comprehensive deal with any developed country. Do we have such a deal with USA? Do we have such a deal with France? Do we have such a deal yet with European Union? है ना? So this is the first comprehensive deal with any developed country. ठीक? First and foremost, what do we mean by the fractured world? So when we talk specifically from the context of economy in the geopolitics, you people are coming across various headlines on the daily basis. Like for example, the various countries which are trying to put various kind of tariffs on the other country's product. The major reason for that is that after the pandemic, there has taken place a kind of a K-shaped recovery, right? Where some sectors of the economy has actually, kind of reversed back to their original economic potential, while some sectors are actually still facing a lot of economic shortage. Large-scale job layoffs are taking place. That is also being caused by large-scale automation. So because of these internal economic issues, if, let's say for example, there is a particular country which is exporting us a lot of products and it is in high demand in our country, then the easiest route is to actually take the path of trade protectionism, putting a lot of tariffs, as it has been done by US, as it has been done by EU. EU, for example, if it is not putting tariffs on our Indian products, they are trying to take indirect method by, kind of restricting the imports of Indian products under phytosanitary measures. Then the various supply chain disruptions, right? For example, the very simple one can be the blockade of Strait of Hormuz, right? Which was done by Iran to actually, kind of create pressure on USA-led bloc and Israel. Thus, in this context, this trade deal actually becomes very important for our country because it is going to provide us a very lucrative market for our products and thus obviously promote the idea of Make in India, which we can also extend to Make for World. Second argument given in the today's article is that does UK has realized our country's importance in the Indo-Pacific region? So remember that this Indo-Pacific region which you often hear about, even earlier we have discussed that how it amounts for almost 30% of the global trade on daily basis, amounts for almost 1 lakh passage of container ships in an year, amounts for almost 80% of the oil trade which takes place, and contains 3 important straits or bottlenecks: your Strait of Hormuz, your Bab el Mandab, and Strait of Malacca. This Strait of Hormuz itself accounts for 20% of the global oil demand, which actually passes through the Strait of Hormuz on daily basis. As the luck would have it, thanks to our geographical location and the kind of a large scale vast coastline which we have, right, more than 11,000 kilometers. Thus, we have easy access to all of these three regions. Take it. And thus, it actually strengthens our country's role as a net security provider in this region of Indo-Pacific as well for the trade vessels of United Kingdom. Our country's point of view is that these people are nothing but our former colonizers. We also share the kind of a ethics-based connection that both of us are democratic countries. Also, we have a multicultural society. There is a large-scale Indian diaspora which actually resides in UK. And in that context, we have tried to strengthen our relationship with UK, which will form your introduction basically, that India and UK has actually signed comprehensive strategic partnership in 2021, and under India-UK roadmap of 2030, how both the countries have envisioned a path to enhance our trade and strategic partnership. Take one ready-made introduction prepared. And now, if the question says how UK is actually a cornerstone for India's presence in Europe. So when we are saying that yes, indeed, UK has realized the India's role as a net security provider in the region of Indo-Pacific. At the same point of a time, thanks to the colonial legacy, UK also has a lot of important naval bases, like for example in Oman, in Bahrain, in Kenya, right, in the region of Indo-Pacific. We can also utilize these naval facilities. So for example, many of the time we discuss about the string of pearls policy of China, under which it is trying to basically encircle India in Indo-Pacific by creating commercial and military ports in this region. For example, a military outlet in Djibouti, a East African country, or for example, a commercial port, lease of Hambantota port in Sri Lanka, right at the southern tip of our country. In response to that, we have basically launched, let's say, necklace diamond, right? And that diamond necklace policy, which is our response to China's policy of string of pearls, the idea is that we can actually very effectively utilize these naval bases of UK as well. Thus, we have actually embarked upon that path to further strengthen our defense with them under Defense and International Security Partnership of 2015. The militaries under them, the navies under them, they actually conduct a lot of bilateral exercises together, right? A lot of technological transfer takes place under Konkan, Cobra Warrior and Ajay Warrior. Then in the context of emerging technologies, let's say for example, we were talking about the production of green hydrogen or the creation of, let's say for example, photovoltaic cell. There is also India-UK Science and Innovation Council, right, which is trying to promote basically the scientific collaborations between the two nations. Remember, UK also has one of the high patents when it comes to the emerging technologies. We can actually, borrow some technologies from there, implement in our country. Then there exists India-UK Net Zero Innovation Virtual Center, right, where we are actually trying to effectively take steps toward decarbonizing our economy as well. We also participated together in the joint research and development of COVID vaccine. Remember that when we talk about the cultural ethos, do not forget to write about the large-scale Indian diaspora which is present in the UK and how that significantly shapes the policies of UK as well, because very recently you people can recall that how there was an Indian origin citizen of UK who ended up becoming the Prime Minister of UK as well. And thus we have also tried to strengthen the mobility of a lot of workers, because UK being a developed nation is also facing the issue of declining total fertility rate. Keep this in mind. Take it. So their population is actually aging and declining. They are also facing a shortage when it comes to the young demography of labor workforce, a concept which we call as demographic winter. Take it. Thus, they are also attracting laborers from our country under Migration and Mobility Partnership Agreement of 2021. Just look here, Indian-UK navies conduct joint exercise in North Arabian Sea, or for example, home away from home, where Indians go. 3.5 millions, right, in UAE. Almost 20% of our diaspora actually resides in UAE. 12% resides in US. 12% in Saudi Arabia. Almost 4.5 to 5% resides in UK. Keep this in mind. So when we talk about this free trade agreement, right, Does it matters for Indian economy? Is it profitable for our country? The idea is that it actually opens some very key sector of services for our country, right? So it's obvious that the service sector is, or the tertiary sector is one of the largest GDP contributor of our country. UK is opening a lot of such sectors there, where we can actually end up providing a lot of services, right, which will actually end up generating a large scale employment in our country as well. UK is also granting us a lot of commercial presence right to Indian companies. So let's say, for example, you are a micro, small or medium enterprise functioning in our country. You now want to open a branch in UK, convert yourself into a multinational company, get some more concession from the Indian government itself. That is also a facility which is available to you now. Then the Economy Export Promotion Council of India has actually set up a target that how the engineering exports can actually double to $7.5 billion by 2030, and one of the important component of that can be such large scale electronic component demand which is actually being risen in the UK, right, for our Indian products. Just look here, the major export products: telecom instruments, electric machinery and equipments, RMG of cotton included accessories, drug formulation and biologicals, gold and other precious jewelry materials, your man-made fibers, paper products, footwear of leather, all of that. So remember, UK is the second largest export market for our ready-made garments, right? I will give you a much better example. Very recently, this Wimbledon is taking place. Okay. Some of you might be following that. In Wimbledon, you might have seen these tennis players, right? They use a particular towel. That towel is made up by a company called as Welspun. Welspun is a company which is actually based in the region of Kutch in Gujarat, where they actually create these very fine cotton fabric textiles, which is actually largely exported to the UK. Okay, so they basically focus on the export market, right? So just imagine that the towels which you see this tennis player being used in Wimbledon, that is being manufactured in the region of Kutch in Gujarat. Okay. So is it going to be, let's say for example, if we get concessions in this textile sector which actually employs a large scale workforce of our country, don't you think that will be very beneficial for our economy? Also, what used to happen was that these least developed nations, like for example Bangladesh, Vietnam, they used to term themselves that we are least developed, है ना, sir हम तो गरीब हैं, ठीक है? So when their product used to land in UK, right? Again, fine cotton textile, ठीक है? They have a legacy of that as well. So fine cotton textile being exported to the market of UK and then to other European nations as well, ठीक है? And under completely, getting trade concession and paying zero duty. So obviously, it is cheap, good quality. It used to beat our Indian textile there. Why? Because on our Indian textile, they were actually charging a custom duty of 10%. But what if now that is not applicable? Don't you think we will have a level playing field with these least developed nations like Bangladesh and Vietnam? Just to give you a context, just look here. As per the World Textile Export, right, the report which was released by the Global Trade Research Institute, World textile export between 2013 and 23 risen over 11.4%, while India's export during the same period actually jumped by a mere 6.2%. Just look at the growth which was actually witnessed by Vietnam, that is 96% in the same period, and by Bangladesh, that is 67% in the same period. Okay? But now we are also going to have the same level playing field. So if we make good quality products, that will actually create a large scale demand in the region of UK. Also, as per the Small Industry and Development Bank of India, MSME sector actually contribute to 45% export, right? Textile sector is an integral part of that and employs 25 crore people. From the perspective of UK, their GDP is going to increase to 2.2 billion pounds every year, and thus there exists a lucrative market for our country which has a very high propensity to consume. All we need to do to capture that particular market is to create good quality products at cheap quality, at cheap price, and that cheap price can be achieved thanks to this FTA, free trade agreement. What are the dishes in the buffet? Take it. So first and foremost, let's try to analyze from their perspective what goods they will get. Take it. They are getting goods only, right? Since they arrived on the date of 31st of August, right, 23rd of August 1608, right? William Hawkins arrived in our country. Since then, they are taking goods only from our country under this deal also. For example, we are now going to reduce tariff for the British cars. From earlier it was 110%. So let's say if a car was manufactured there at a price of 20 lakh rupees, by the time it used to reach to India, the price used to be more than 40 lakh rupees. But now this tariff is going to be cut down to 30% and will be further brought down to 10% by the year of 2031. Second, this particular tariff which you are providing for their cars, take care, tariff reduction, that will be applicable to only 20,000 vehicles this year. And then after 5 years, by the year of 2031, we will increase it to almost 37,000 cars. Even on the alcoholic beverages, earlier we were charging 150% per bottle. Now there will be only 75% tariff. Take care. I see some of you celebrating. Take it. Do not celebrate. We'll see the shortcomings of it as well. The positives for India is tariff on Indian textile and garments have been eliminated. Thanks. Now that we can actually compete with Bangladesh and Vietnam in that. Custom duty on gem and jewelry has been brought down to 0. Some custom changes has been done, like for example, for the first time, India has been allowed the system of self-declaration of origin by the exporters of UK. Take it. At the same time, there is a removal of 14% tariff which has been done on the UK's medical devices as well, for which we were largely import reliant on China. But now, because if there is a reduction on the medical devices which we are importing from UK, so that will become cheap in our country. Okay? So we are basically trying to diversify our source of imports as well. Keep this in mind. The overall impact is that UK is going to remove tariffs on 99% of the product line. And thus, $6.5 billion worth of goods exported by India will now enter UK duty-free. And this particular free trade agreement, for the first time being culminated with a developed nation, is a key pillar to actually achieve the vision of becoming $1 trillion export economy by the year of 2030. Take it. Another very important provision is the double contribution convention. ठीक है, ये क्या है? Let's try to understand this. How does it work? So earlier what used to happen that these workers, let's say for example there is an Indian company and that Indian company has established a firm in the UK. ठीक है, let's say the name of this Indian company is TO, है ना? So now let's say for example this particular company is sending some Indian workers abroad in the UK to go and work there, ठीक है, as a labor. These workers who are not the citizen of UK and thus working there as a temporary workers were actually termed as detached worker. These detached worker under the Social Security Contribution Scheme of UK were actually required to pay national insurance contribution. Okay? Just like how the EPFO works in our country, Employees Provident Fund Organization, that let's say there is a 8% okay, of the income which is of the worker which is being provided by the employee, right, to this social security contribution, right, or national insurance contribution, and approximately 15% of the income was being provided by the employer. Okay? So let's say for example the employer is saying that the cost to the company is 100 rupees or let's say 100 euro. 8 euro will be provided by you and 15 euro will be provided by me. So this is basically going into social security contribution. Okay? And the remaining salary of 77 euro will be given to you. Okay? Is this clear? But that actually used to act as a double whammy. Why? Because any benefit from such social security in UK can accrue only after 10 years. But these workers are allowed to work between the period of 1 to 5 years only. So let's say for 5 years I kept on paying this, okay, on monthly basis, 8 euro, 8 euro, 8 euro. Okay. But will I get any return from that, any social security from that? The answer stands no. The normal regulation was that if you are here only for 1 year, then you cannot pay. But if you are here for more than 1 year, you are required to pay this. The new provision has actually extended this exemption limit up to 5 years as long as you are paying security in India, let's say for example under EPFO. And thus it will end up covering 90 to 95% of Indian workers in UK. Take it. The government officials data says that there are approximately 75,000 plus Indian workers, take it, and 900 plus companies in UK. And thus there will be a lot of savings for Indian companies, more than $500 million. Thus they will be actually able to increase the salary of these Indian workers. It will actually lead to generation of much more employment, because they can now invest this $500 million into research and development, R&D. ये clear है? Remember that all is not well as well, because a lot of Indian students and workers, they actually topped the UK's immigration tally with 74,000 living in the year of June 2025 itself, because of various conditions. One is the lack of job opportunities which exist there. The second is also the huge issue of racism as well. Also in this deal, there do exist some thorns in the roses, some persisting challenges. Like for example, let's say when you are saying that we are going to import 20,000 cars from UK at a cost which was earlier 110%, but now under tariff it is going to be only 30%. So let's say there was a car which was 20 lakh rupees manufacturing cost, okay, in Indian rupees term, and it was costing, when it was imported, approximately 40 lakh rupees. Now, if it is being charged only 3%, then the cost of that car will be only 26 lakh rupees. So there is almost a 14 lakh rupees reduction. Take it. Don't you think that if I'm getting a very good quality, European manufactured car with a good quality, good system and everything, in comparison to an indigenous made car, why I will buy an Indian car, that too if I am getting this at a much lower price? Don't you think this act as a kind of an antithetical to the idea of Make in India? This 90% reduction in tariff line and 85% on UK products will be reduced to zero tariffs by the year of 2035. Thus, the ghost of India-UAE's Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement and the Free Trade Agreement with Australia, that also comes in mind, because even they had faced a large-scale concern by the farmer bodies and trade organization, that how these good quality products being imported from these countries can very significantly impact the income of such MSMEs, such farmers. Also, at one stage you are saying that okay, theek hai, look at Gujarat, it's a liquor-free state. Look at Bihar, it's a liquor-free state. Theoretically, I am saying, we will not go in the practical dimension. Liquor-free states. We are following the ideals of Mahatma Gandhi. On the other hand, we are actually reducing the tariffs on whiskey, tariffs on liquor. Remember, UK is the world's largest whiskey manufacturer. Don't you think that is going to actually promote consumption of liquor? Will ultimately lead to slow premiumization trend. Further, remember that there is an issue of carbon border adjustment mechanism as well, which we have discussed quite a number of times, where the European Union is actually going to put a large scale penalty mechanism or on the cost of the import of the products which has actually been created through a process which has led to a large scale carbon emissions, and that is going to impact steel, aluminium, electricity, fertilizer, cement industries of our country. Even though UK is not a part of European Union, remember, it has decided to implement carbon border adjustment mechanism from the 1st of January 2027 as well. Thus, there exists limitation of trade as well. About 3.3% of India's export in 2024 went to UK out of 100%. So UK still is a very marginalized market when it comes to the domain of our export. UK makes up only 1.2% of India's import. It ranks 5th globally as the export destination and 6th largest FDI investor. Keep this in mind. Take it. So the idea is, what can be the way forward? क्या कर सकते हैं? First and foremost, we can actually link such production linked incentive scheme with any future free trade agreements which we are going to negotiate. That ठीक है, you want to import cars to us, है ना? कोई बात नहीं, we are going to reduce the tariff line to 30%, but set up a manufacturing unit in our country. Create those cars here. Bring your technology, bring your research and development. Take care, have your patented technology, but employ our laborers. Also, do value chain integration through creation of such specialized industrial parks, where a lot of such special impetus and facilities can be provided to these companies to actually, kind of incentivize them to create such manufacturing units in our country. Then to actually link our micro, small and medium enterprises through such global connect program. Boost research and development in export oriented sunrise sectors, right? Like for example, your green hydrogen, your creation of photovoltaic solar panels, creation of future drones which are ready for the warfare, and high value products. Also, we can actually kind of secure a greater market access for the service sector. Keep this in mind. And remember this fit for 55 package, okay, very important from your prelims perspective as well, under which all of this carbon border adjustment mechanism discussion is actually taking place. Try to attempt this particular question, a probable one for this year means, and we move forward to the next news, where from the means value addition perspective, we are going to discuss an article which is actually highly critical of this idea of one nation, one election, stating that it will not end up fixing what already stands broken. Remember, article is critical of this perspective and not the speaker. At the same point of a time, from the perspective of becoming a future bureaucrat, always focus on the principle of neutrality. You are not supposed to take the sides. You are there to examine both the side of the coins. So similarly, following the same fashion, we will also try to analyze the positives of one nation, one election and the negatives out of it. For this year mains examination, you can actually try to add this particular aspect as one of the electoral reforms which can be taken by our country. The context is that the article says that how India's parliament is set up to take up the 129th constitutional amendment bill to synchronize Lok Sabha and all state assembly election. The idea is that the government is saying that we are going to conduct one nation, one election, okay, from the year of 2029 onwards. So the Lok Sabha election is due to take place in 2029 as well as 10 other states. So they will have election on the same time. Okay? So that is Lok Sabha plus 10. Then there are 10 states legislative assembly election, okay, which will take place in the year of 2028 itself, because they will dissolve in 2028. Koi baat nahi. We will extend their term for one more year and then they will make them dissolve in 2029. So they can also have elections at the same point of a time. Remaining 8 states legislative assembly elections, they are due in 2030. We can actually curtail their term and make them dissolve in 2029 itself, and thus from then onwards a simultaneous election will take place for state legislative assembly for your Lok Sabha election at one given point of time. For which purpose, as per the article, we are required to amend the constitutional article of 83 and 172, which basically defines the duration of houses of the parliament, okay, where they state that Rajya Sabha is a permanent body, not subject to dissolving, and Lok Sabha will dissolve every 5 years. Okay. Now to do this, they require basically 2/3 majority in both the houses and ratification by half of the state. So, in the examination of mains 2024, there was a very specific question which was asked, that examine the need for electoral reform as suggested by various committees with particular reference to one nation, one election principle. Okay. Now there were 2 important committees, okay, which people could have quoted in the answer. One is B.S. Chauhan committee and one is your Ram Nath Kovind committee. Ram Nath Kovind committee basically made a statement. It said that agar hum one nation one election karenge, theek hai, simultaneous election will take place across the country, theek hai, for each state legislative assembly, for Lok Sabha at one point of a time, then our country's GDP is actually going to increase 1.5%, theek hai, after simultaneous election. Today's editorial takes a highly critical viewpoint of that. It says that as per the Election Commission of India, the government's total election expenditure is not even 0.1% of its own budget. The budget which you are basically launching every single year, the total election expenditure is less than 0.1%. How, even if let's say for example you are going to conduct simultaneous election, how it will save up so much of money that the GDP will grow by 1.5%. Rather, focus on reforms on some more pertinent issues, like for example, make mandatory disclosure of all donation which is being done to the political parties. Enforceable expenditure limits shall be put, right, to contest election, as well as disbar the criminally tainted candidates altogether from contesting election. The criminalization of politics is a very important issue for this year mains examination. Take it. So let's try to understand both the sides, the argument in the favor of the simultaneous election as well as the argument against it. Okay. Argument in the favor says that, let's say for example, in the month of March, Lok Sabha election takes place. Okay. In your state, you go and vote for the parliamentarians. You come back home. 2 months down the line, now there is a state legislative assembly election due. Again, you see some other parties, they are also, putting the same banners, giving you 500 rupees, right, to actually, kind of buy your consigns, है ना? So all of that is taking place. So basically there is a polity which is perennially in the election, and thus to actually conduct this election, don't you think there is a large scale deployment of CAPF forces which is required? For this, let's say for example, the district administration is consistently involved in the safe conduct of these elections. Then let's say for example, the teachers, the doctors, they are actually provided a lot of duties in this election system, right? The government teachers, let's say for example. So obviously that leads to what? Disruption in regular administrative and development work as well. Then before the election, just to maintain the, the sanctity of it, the Election Commission of India basically puts on the model code of conduct. One provision of that is that the government during the imposition of model code of conduct cannot come with one new scheme. Let's say for example, the election has been scheduled, it is going to take place tomorrow. Today I come in the government, and if such model code of conduct doesn't exist, I will launch a new scheme. I will say that whoever tomorrow will vote on my symbol, let's say we all can create another party, एक नई party बना लेते हैं. These days any party is being formed, we also create one, aspirants support party, ASP from tomorrow to today. If anyone wants to do that, please comment down below as well. So let's say under the banner of this aspirant support party, I come and I say that whoever will vote for me, I am going to, let's say for example, give you 5,000 rupees tomorrow. Everyone will do that. Correct? Thus, to actually ensure and prevent all of these malpractices, there is a model code of conduct. So no new policy can be launched. But what if there was some urgent issue which required such a policy intervention? So that leads to a large scale policy paralysis. Then when a particular party is consistently fighting election, let's say some state legislative assembly election, some block level election, some municipality election, some central level election, then these politicians, they are always in the populist mode, giving you all of these freebies, right, as much as they can to actually buy your votes, instead of actually taking a reform for a long-term period, functioning in the policy-making mode. Many of the time, to actually win the election by hook or crook, the kind of hate speeches which are made, the kind of the caste-based politics which is done, the communalism which is actually spread among the people, it lead to large-scale polarization of society. Right? Thus, yes, simultaneous elections shall take place. But then there are some arguments against also. First is that it can end up undermining the concept of federalism, because no scope for elections will take place in the case of untimely dissolution of the assembly. It ends up violating the entire concept of periodic accountability. Let's say there was a party, it brings some particular measures as a central government. The measures were not liked by the people. Let's say any reform in the agriculture sector, it was not liked by the farmer. So when the same party will come to contest in the state legislative assembly election, the farmers will not vote for them, set up their periodic accountability. Also, it is difficult for the masses to actually understand that at what instance they are voting for which particular person at which particular state. Am I voting for a state legislative assembly? Am I voting for, let's say for example, the central government right now? Or am I voting for the person who is going to be elected as the panchayat ward? Thus, it can eventually lead to what? A single party dominance. That is also another argument which is given by the opposition party. Keep all of these arguments very dear to you. And we move forward to the prelim section, where we are going to discuss a very important news, right? Where a data breach has taken place in the India's largest nuclear power plant, that is Kudankulam nuclear power plant. Remember, it is our country's largest nuclear power station, which is located in the Tirunelveli district of Tamil Nadu and has an installed capacity of 6,000 megawatt of electricity. Envisaged one, not currently installed one. Have we sought any international collaboration for this? The answer is yes, where we are actually installing such VVR reactors by Atom Story Export, right, which is basically a kind of a state unit of Russia, and a collaboration which has been secured with Nuclear Power Corporation of India Limited, that is NPCIL. Again, remember that this Kudankulam nuclear power plant, it actually functions on pressurized water reactors. What are these pressurized water reactors? Pressurized heavy water reactors are those kind of nuclear reactors where the heavy water, that is deuterium, it is used as both nuclear coolant as well as neutron moderator. Take it. What is neutron moderator? Neutron moderator basically helps to reduce the speed of fast neutrons, leaving them as thermal neutrons with only minimal kinetic energy. And these thermal neutrons are actually immensely much more susceptible than fast neutrons to actually propagate a good nuclear chain reaction using uranium-235. Why Kudankulam nuclear power plant, which is the largest nuclear power plant of our country, is in the news? Because leak of highly sensitive, more than 19,000 files of Kudankulam nuclear power plant was actually done by a ransomware group, the name of which is World Leaks, highlighting the issue of cybersecurity. So if a question comes in GS3 paper, the question is on cybersecurity, please quote this as your introduction. Okay? The largest nuclear power plant has a lot of sensitive information which has actually been compromised thanks to this lack of cybersecurity infrastructure in our country. Okay? Now in this context, let's try to understand what is this uranium-235 fuel. Okay? What is this reaction of neutron chain which we discuss about? To understand that, we'll basically understand a simple concept, that is there are two kind of nuclear fuels. Okay? One is fissile nuclear fuel. Fissile nuclear fuels are basically those fissile isotopes which can be directly used as a fuel, like for example uranium-233, uranium-235 and plutonium-239. Then there exists certain fertile nuclear fuel which needs to be converted into fissile fuel, by hitting off the neutrons, like for example uranium-238 and thorium-232. These are the places which have large scale uranium deposits in our country, like for example Jaduguda in Singhbhum of Jharkhand, or for example Tummalpalle in Andhra Pradesh, Lambapur in Telangana, Rohil mine in Rajasthan, your Domi Siat and Wakhin in the region of Meghalaya. But more than uranium, our country actually has rich reserves of thorium. Thoriums are basically the placer deposits which are found along the streams, rivers, beaches, etc., where they are majorly extracted from the monazite ore, a rare earth phosphate mineral. Naturally, they are found in the coastal districts of Tirunelveli, Tuticorin and Kanyakumari, majorly on the coast of Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Odisha and Andhra Pradesh. Remember that Indian Rare Earth Limited under the Department of Atomic Energy is the only public sector authority which is actually authorized to mine and produce monazite in our country. Okay? So till now you people have understood that there exist two kind of nuclear fuels. One is fissile nuclear fuel, like for example 233, 235 and plutonium-239. Then there are certain fertile nuclear fuels which are required to be converted into a fissile nuclear fuels like 238 and 232, that is thorium. Okay? That basically forms the three-stage nuclear program of our country. Keep this in mind. First and foremost is pressurized heavy water reactor, where we basically use natural uranium, 7 kg of uranium-235 and 993 kg of uranium-238. So basically 0.7% of 235 which is fissile and 99.3% of uranium-238 which is basically fertile in the nature. To create what? A nuclear fission reaction. Here we used heavy water, deuterium, used as both moderator and coolant, just like how we are doing in the Kudankulam nuclear power plant. Remember, almost 22 nuclear reactor works upon this principle in our country. Here the uranium-238, which is basically fertile in the nature, it absorbs the neutron which is being released by this fissile material and thus transform into plutonium-239 as a spent fuel that again is what? A fissile material. So now we again use uranium-238 and plutonium-239 now in the fast breeder reactor, where the blanket of uranium-238 over the fissile fuel core, the fertile actually starts absorbing the neutron which is being produced by that and starts converting into further plutonium-239. Thus creates a self-sustaining chain reaction. Here the coolant is not deuterium, rather liquid sodium. Keep this in mind. The third stage where we want to reach is the advanced heavy water reactor, where we can use thorium-232 to eventually produce uranium-233, which is again a fissile material, undergoing nuclear fission to create a self-sustaining chain reaction where the coolant is going to be light water. Remember, not heavy water. Okay? Remember all of these facts and we move forward to the next news, where we'll try to cover very selectively a Bhakti saint. Okay? Not indulging into the complete coverage of the Bhakti movement, but very selectively sticking to the news. The news talk about Ravidasya community, a Dalit group primarily in the Punjab's Doaba region with nearly a population of 12 lakh members is actually renewing the demand for a separate religious category in the census. This moment actually has been triggered by the 2009 Vienna attack on their leader, which holds significant political weight with Punjab elections approaching next year. How and why? Let's try to understand that. So first and foremost, these Dalit members of Ravidasya community, they operate under their own scripture. ठीक है? तो उनको जाके किसी ने कहा that you people have freedom of speech and expression under Article 19. They were like, नहीं, we do not want that. We have our own constitution that is called as Amrit Bani. Amrit Bani, which was written by Ravidas, nahi, by Ramanand Das, remember this. So the largest kind of a political organization under which the member of this Ravidasya community actually function is your Dera Sachkhand Ballan, founded by Baba People Das in the 20th century. Remember, Punjab has India's largest concentration of Ravidasyas in our country, which forms 32% of the, which forms almost 11% of the state population, and 32% of the state population of Punjab is actually comprises of the Dalit. Ye clear hai? So who was this Saint Ravidas? Saint Ravidas is actually considered to be the person who was inspired by the person who actually, kind of burned the flame of Bhakti in the 12th and 13th century, and that was your Ramanand. Ramanand, who basically started propagating the idols of Visisht Advait of Ramanuj and Nath Panthi of Matsyendranath, where he says that yes, indeed, there is two realities, Atman and Brahman. Okay? We are basically Atman, we have a self-consciousness, and then there exists a Brahman which has basically created all of this reality around you. But the Brahman also has certain attributes. If you want to realize that, then you are basically required to follow the Bhakti mark. Okay? Do the prayers, do the rituals, and eventually the God will give you the knowledge to actually understand the magnanimity of the divinity which exists around you. Okay? That is the Visisht Advait as propounded by Ramanuj. Ye clear? Then he basically amalgamated the concept of Nirgun, or basically where the God exists without any attribute, as it was propounded in Advait Vedanta theory by whom? By Shankaracharya, and the principle of Shagun as well, where he said, look at Ram. Ram is what? Ram is the biggest example of the amalgamation of Nirgun and Shagun as well, where Ram as a God is what? Incarnation of Vishnuji, take it on the earth, but he has taken a form of a human. So basically the divinity resides or lies within himself, right, within his soul, where he is also going through all the pain, all the issues which is actually faced by a common man, but he is actually showing the attributes of a high moral virtue character, right? Maryada Purushottam Ram. Take. Thus Ramanand basically founded Sant Parampara, right, a Guru Shishya Parampara, where such teachings was basically transferred to the next generation, and thus he is considered to be the teacher of Kabir, Ravidas and Dhanna. So Ravidas was one of the disciples of Ramanand, that can be said. There were female disciples as well, like for example Sursuri and Padyavati. Some important texts which were written by Guru Ramanand were Gyan Leela, Ramchana Padati, and very important Yog Chintamani. Remember this. Take it. Ravidas, right, from where we get to know about him? From two important texts. One is Bhaktamal by Nabha Das, written in 1585 C, take a contemporary of Akbar, and Sahaj. Take it. So he basically started propagating a kind of a mystical state or a Sahaj, where the realization of ultimate truth eventually takes place. He said why there is a kind of such a high scale authority which has been taken by the Brahmanas, that okay, we have, or we are the sole propagators of Vedas, or we are the people with sole knowledge about the Vedas. He said, you know Ved, do you really know it? then why you have the ego of knowing it, right? Basically kind of mimicking the Socrates, who said, and I quote, that I know one thing for sure, that I know nothing. ठीक है? His verses are also found in Guru Granth Sahib. And basically, the tradition which is closely associated with the sayings of Guru Ravidas is Panchmani tradition of Dadu Panthi. ठीक है? ये clear है? Remember that when he said that there will come a mystical state where you will eventually realize that you are one and the same with the God, and then you will basically leave all the materialistic desires which you people will have, and thus I will create a state like that with amalgamation of such people and name it Begumpura, a kind of a casteless and sorrow-laced utopian society. The two major disciples of Guru Ravidas is considered to be Kabir and Mirabai, following the Guru Shishya Parampara. Kabir, about whom we get to know by the Kabir Sagar of Dharmdas and Dabistan-e-Mahzab written by Ardestani, where he was born basically in a Julaha or a weaver family, around Lahartara Lake. You can see Ravidas actually used to work as a shoemaker. Kabir was basically a weaver, where he basically started a practice of Sadhukadi, where he started preaching in the commonest language of the people like Braj, Bhojpuri, Marwadi, Avadi. The texts which are associated with Kabir are Bijak, Bani, Dohe, Sakhi, specifically his Ulta Bansi poems, which are basically a kind of a satire at the state of society at that point of a time. Pothi pad pad jagmua, Pandit bhaya na koi, ढाई आखर प्रेम के, पढ़े सो पंडित होए. ठीक है? और very important for all of us, बुरा जो देखन मैं चला, बुरा न मिलिया कोई, जो दिल खोजा आपना, मुझसे बुरा न कोई. If you want to reform the society, first start with yourself. ठीक है? Mirabai, who was the wife of Bhoj Raj of Mewad and the daughter-in-law of Rana Sanga. ठीक है? You people might be recalling Rana Sanga, who basically fought with Babur. She wrote bhajans for Krishna, right, as Girdhar Nagar, the very famous one being Ram Ratan Dhan Payo. Even her compositions are actually found in Adi Granth, and it was she who basically revived the worshipping of Krishna at the places of Vrindavan and Dwarka. So remember all of these important informations about these important bhakti saints, and we move forward to the next news, where we'll try to cover some very important international initiatives which is being taken for the purpose of afforestation. What is the context of the news? The context is the Great Green Wall of China, which China is actually creating to check the spread of Taklamakan Desert under the 3 North program. And under this 3 North program of China, China is basically doing afforestation using a technique called as straw checkerboards technique, where they actually go and in the kind of a deserted area, where there is a presence of large scale sand, first they install a wooden stick. Then around that wooden stick, they create a kind of a irrigation mechanism. Then they plant a sapling there, which has a kind of a consistent supply of water thanks to the irrigation streams which has been created. And it is supported against the sand dune which is taking place, right? Because of the stick which is behind it. That is called as a straw checkerboard technique. Planting of saplings to actually stabilize sand dunes against the wind and grow plants using stick and irrigation system. Using that, so you can also use it as a kind of an innovative mechanism in the afforestation section of your answer. Okay? Using that, China's deserted land has actually shrunk by 10% overall since 2000, and the forest cover in this particular area has actually increased from just being 5% in 1978 to 14% in 2022. These are some other global initiatives for afforestation, like for example, reducing emission from deforestation program, which has been effectively utilized by Brazil, Indonesia, Congo Basin countries by monetizing the carbon storage in forest. Brazil actually used this to kind of reduce deforestation in Amazon forest by 70% since 2004. Very recently we were discussing about Amazon forest and I had told you some very salient data about it. Can you just use your active recall mechanism at this stage, pause the video and comment down what were those important data which were shared about Amazon rainforest in one of the earlier sessions by me. Okay? Second, community forestry program by Nepal, where they have actually transferred the forest management rights to local community, using which the forest cover actually increased from just being 26% to 45% of the total geographical area of Nepal. It is right now around 46%. Payment for ecosystem services launched by Costa Rica, where the government actually pays the landowners for the forest conservation and watershed protection. ठीक है, हमारे यहाँ इतना डिफॉरेस्टेशन क्यों हो रहा है? The day government says you plant a tree and we will pay you, ठीक है, next day you will not be able to find road in our country, ठीक है, there will be forests only which will exist. And 25% increase in forest cover since 1980s. Indigenous stewardship model in Canada to recognize the traditional knowledge of communities and actually provide them land rights for conservation effort. Zero deforestation policy by Germany to actually clear the land use zoning and net zero deforestation. Our country also runs Green India Mission, launched in 2014 as a centrally sponsored scheme. The idea was to actually implement the land degradation neutrality target under United Nations Convention to combat desertification to restore 26 million hectares of degraded land by 2030. There are two important objectives. One, we are trying to increase forest cover on 5 million hectares of forest and non-forested land, and to further improve the quality of forest cover on additional 5 million hectares of forested land, with an objective to enhance carbon dioxide sequestration by 60 million tons by 2030. When it comes to green wall, does such green wall exist in our country? Yes. We are trying to create one from Delhi to Gujarat. Forest belt likely to run roughly from Porbandar to Panipat, covering the entire Aravalli range. A green wall which will act as a barrier for dust from west and check the eastward march of Thar Desert. We can also use basically this straw checkerboard technique. Similarly, one such great green wall project also runs in Africa in the Sahel region, keep this in mind, spanning almost 8,000 kilometers, with the aim of holding back the Saharan sand. Just look here, this is your Sahara Desert. So you should also know about the existence of Sahara deserts and the countries Mauritania, Senegal, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, Nigeria, Chad, Sudan, Eritrea, Djibouti, Ethiopia. ठीक है. Then there are some countries which form the part of Horn of Africa. ठीक है. Remember that also from the perspective of map. And we move forward to the last news of the day, where we'll try to cover a green energy push which has been taken by the government of Gujarat in the form of announcing data center policy for 26-29, targeting investment of 6 lakh crore rupees, where the government of Gujarat is creating artificial intelligence ready data centers which can actually utilize 7.5 gigawatt of data center capacity, which will be entirely provided by renewable energy. What is mandatory is that any such data center entity must ensure that at least 51% of electricity consumed in these data centers for core operation, they shall come from green energy. So, the Gujarat government is providing duty and tax exemptions and uninterrupted power and water supply. They have taken basically a kind of a leaf from the hat of Google which is building AI data center campus in Andhra Pradesh entirely by green energy, the first in our country. Thus, Gujarat has basically launched the largest capacity data center in our country, going to provide 100% reimbursement of electricity duty for over 20 years, full reimbursement of eligible expenses on plant and machinery. Idea is that this will actually help to create large-scale indigenous data storage under Digital Data Protection Act of 2023. Further put impetus on the renewable energy target, which is our Panch Amrit target, and meet our country's nationally determined contribution under the Paris Agreement of 2050. ठीक है, क्या कोई बता सकता है what are the 3 updated nationally determined contributions of our country for the year of 2035 only from the basis of recall? ठीक है, Google and ChatGPT का यूज नहीं करना है. And with this we have reached to the end of our discussion today. Do not forget to attempt the questions at the end of the video and test your knowledge. We will meet in a very interesting discussion very soon. Till then, all the very best for your preparation and thank you.